benim ikinci konuşmacım A.J. Roberts. Bayan Roberts, Tulsa Üniversitesi'nden, Kimya ve Pensilvanya Üniversitesi'nden de molekül biyoloji, hücre biyolojisi alanında doktora derecesi bulunuyor. Roberts, 97-2001 yılları arasında Yale Üniversitesi'nde viral patojenler ve aşılama üzerine çalışmalar yürüttü. 2006-2013 yılları arasında Virginia Üniversitesi'nde mikrobiyoloji fakültesinde yardımcı profesör olarak çalıştı ve mikrobiyoloji, immünoloji ve bulaşıcı hastalıklar programının başkanlığını yaptı. 2013-2015 yılları arasında Yale Rivendell Enstitüsü'nde misafir araştırmacı olarak faaliyetlerine devam etti. Dr. Roberts, hakemli çeşitli bilimsel dergilerde 40'tan fazla makale yayınladı ve dünyanın dört bir yanında birçok ulusal ve uluslararası bilimsel konferansa katıldı. 2005 yılında bulaşıcı hastalıklar konusunda araştırmaları dolayısıyla liyakat ödülüne layık görüldü. Şu an bilim ve dinin uyumu biyokimyasal seviyede yaratılışın delilleri gibi konularda çalışmalar yürütüyor. Dr. Roberts bugünkü konuşmasında evrimlerin sıklıkla kurdukları kelime oyunlarının evrimin sözde kanıtlı yönetilen süreçlerin aslında evrimle, yani bir türün başka bir türe dönüşmesiyle mutasyonla hiçbir ilgisi olmayacak. Ayrıca evrimcilerin bu evrimde bu süreçteki sanki evrim gibi insanlara empoze etmeye gelecek. Okay, the floor is yours. Thank you. On this 30 minutes. Thank you.
Thank the organization and science research for inviting us to Turkey. I have thoroughly enjoyed my visit in Turkey, and it is obvious to me that Turkey researchers are people, and so often for peace and for your welfare. Perhaps you have heard the statement. I was once asked if I believe this statement is true. There is more evolution than that the Earth remains on. Well, it might be true, depends on what you mean by the word evolution, and that's what the rest of my talk is about. Evolution is a word that equivocation depends on a word having more than one meaning. It involves using a word where the meaning is glossed over, faulty assertion, and in equivocating, assuming one meaning, actually using a different context. This is often what happens with evolution. Someone makes a statement like this. Is it true? Well, it can be, but it may also be false. It is critical by what you mean evolution. The word evolution, we are going to spend this word, trying to bring some clarity to whether or not that statement might be used in different contexts, actually in reference to 5 different categories, different types of naturalistic processes, dependent on underlying mechanisms to work. These are the 5 categories that will be chemical evolution, microbial evolution, speciation, and macroevolution. My colleague will run you in some detail in minutes about chemical evolution. So I will not spend too much time on this topic, and I will only have a couple of hurdles that chemical evolution is. But chemical evolution refers to the process of generating life from non-life. It is sometimes called a, and it is synthesized by molecules from inorganic compounds. And these are the building blocks of cells. It is at the basis of the naturalistic explanation for the origin. But the hurdles it faces are many. One of them are the chemistries required for the synthesis of many of the biogenic molecules. These chemistries are not together, so if you're trying to generate a sugar, you have a chemistry if you're trying to generate a fatty acid, or a part of DNA and RNA. But not only are the chemistries not compatible with one another, chemistry is not compatible with conditions. The second hurdle, which I will spend a little more time on, is the homochirality of an RNA and DNA, and also the homochirality of amino acids that are found in proteins. Chirality is the orientation of a molecule, and it's sometimes referred to as the handedness of a molecule. And you're right, they are mirror opposite. Although they're both palm, fingers, you cannot put upon the other because they are mirror opposite. This is the problem of chirality. It's true that the sugars in RNA and all proteins share only either a right-handed sugar or a left-handed for amino acids. But if you try to generate sugars or amino acids through naturalistic processing in the laboratory, you don't have a single type of left-handed molecule for amino acids or a single type of right-handed molecule for sugar. And the ratio is left-handed and 50% right-handed, 50% left-handed, 50% amino acids. This makes it very difficult to synthesize RNA steric inhibition, chain termination, yet biological properties, those that are in stark contrast, only left only right-handed. This is explanations of the origin, and I think it points to what we find in cellular processes. So all life has only right-handed, only left-handed amino acids, and yet there is no known mechanism for generating or stably maintaining of only one or other molecule. Now, account. Sorry. My slides must catch up with me. The third hurdle is a naturalistic account for the origin of life is one of information, which again my colleague Fazal Rana has spoken to you at length in his 30 minutes. The DNA, as he described, is the molecular blueprint for all genes and all gene regulation, and by RNA intermediates for all proteins that are produced inside the cell. The information that is stored in the DNA molecule that is often appealed to as indicating an intelligent designer. And many argue that it requires an intelligent designer or God to produce this type of information. But it is not the information that is most difficult to explain within the cell. There is also information at the system level, which Dr. Rana also referred to. How did the cells orient different proteins in different cellular subsystems that accomplish different molecular processes? Where does the information come for structuring these things in the right orientation, and also for making them work in concert together that in a way that is highly complex, intricate, and almost orchestrated like a symphony? It's not enough to just account for the information in DNA, but it is necessary to account for this higher level subsystem metabolic process information as well. Maybe it would help if I gave you an analogy. So if you think about trying to build a car from the ground up, you need all of the parts of the car, and each one, whether it's the plastic parts or the rubber parts or the metal parts or the gasoline, requires information on how to produce those parts. It also requires mechanisms to produce those parts, not just the information. Okay, so now information for the mechanism, information for the production of the part, but that's still not enough. You're left now with just parts of a car. You still need information on how the car systems interact in order to generate locomotion, in order to generate combustion. And so you have to have system-level information in order to put the parts together in the right way in order to get an automobile that you can drive. But even this, I think, is a poor analogy if we're trying to express the complexity within a human cell, within a living cell. A better analogy would be if someone was able to account for all of the functional interactions, all of the pieces, all of the mechanisms that are involved in something as complex as the city of Istanbul. The fourth hurdle, which I will not spend any time on since I have 4 more topics to talk about, is that life on Earth occurred very early. And the life that occurred on Earth occurred almost as soon as life could be sustained on Earth. And it occurred in a highly complex and diversified manner. This challenges, as Fuzz addressed it in his talk, and as I have mentioned so far in my talk, leads many scientists who are committed to a naturalistic paradigm to appeal to something called panspermia. Panspermia is a hypothesis that the biogenic molecules, or perhaps even life itself, did not originate on Earth, but it originated somewhere else in the universe. And that it was transmitted to Earth either through natural things like comets or meteorites, or perhaps through an advanced species. But panspermia does not actually account for the naturalistic origin of life. It just displaces the problem to some unknown place in the universe, where the biochemical, physical, and chemical laws would be the same, and where the challenges of producing life from non-life have not changed. They've just been moved to a different location. So panspermia is not a solution to the problem of the origin of life, and in conclusion, we must reach this, that chemical evolution is not a logical conclusion based for the origin of life on Earth. It is only a naturalistic appeal to account for what we see. What am I doing wrong? Okay. Oh my goodness. Irim, help. Okay, so the second category is microevolution. And microevolution is the process of accruing unguided changes or mutations in the DNA sequence. The mechanism and characteristics of microevolution are twofold. They are unguided or random, and they occur through natural selection. These two elements, unguided and natural selection, are the hallmarks of Darwinian or neo-Darwinian evolution. The mutations themselves occur due to different types of stress that are encountered by the organism, such as UV radiation, hormone responses to stress or heat, and as a result, the DNA can become damaged. It can break. But repair mechanisms exist within the cell that can repair and rejoin the double-stranded DNA ends. Mutations can then occur either through the damage done to the DNA or through the repair mechanism itself. Unguided mutations in the nucleic acid sequence can also occur when the DNA is replicated by the polymerase protein. As it copies the nucleic acid sequence, sometimes it makes mistakes, and it has the ability to correct mistakes, but it is not 100% correcting mistakes. So we still make a mistake in about 1 in every 10 million pairs. So mutations can occur through damage or broken DNA, repair of DNA, or replication of DNA. The main one is that mutations create variability, and when there is variability, selection can occur through natural processes. This means when a mutation allows the organism to survive and thrive, and that organism will survive and thrive. If, on the other hand, it is a deliberate mutation, then the organism will not survive nor thrive. It should be apparent Dr. Rana also points out that natural selection is non-like his blind watchmaker route. Not being driven towards a specific goal or a specific purpose. It is simply natural selection done through the blind that cannot foresee which mutations might one day provide the ability to thrive in a different environment or in a more complex organism. This is a very important element in neo-Darwinian theory that evolution, including microevolution, is non-teleological. I find this to be the most confusing problem when they talk about evolution, and specifically about cellular and molecular processes. It actually is to endow the teleology of the organism. The organism is self-directed towards some explicit goal, present or future. And others endow molecules of DNA with an intention to survive and propagate. Perhaps you've heard of selfish genes. At heart, is an imaginative storytelling effect to captivate an audience. At worst, it is utterly nonsensical, ridiculous. Either way, it is not scientific. In fact, it's counterintuitive to know is true about scientific mechanisms and processes. But cells and organisms are so richly endowed with complexity and adaptive capacities and variations that it's hard to describe complexity without resulting in language like this, which is often wrongly employed. So the third category of evolution. Microbial evolution refers to the process of cellular organisms, bacteria, archaea, simple eukaryotes, or yeast, as they rapidly reproduce and adapt to changing environments by selection of beneficial microevolutionary mutations and promiscuous gene swapping. So bacteria and other cell organisms can actually gain genetic information through three different mechanisms. The first is one called conjugation. Conjugation occurs when bacteria come in contact with one another, and one bacteria transmits genetic information to the second type of horizontal gene or exchange of genetic information is transduction. Transduction is vector mediated. Viruses that infect bacteria can carry information into the bacteria, and a temperate virus remains in the bacteria without killing the bacteria, and the bacteria can replicate having gained new genetic information from the virus. A third mechanism that bacteria cell organisms can use to exchange genetic information is one called transduction, or sometimes transformation. And this occurs when a bacteria dies or it is live, it genetic information into the environment. At such a time, it's possible for the bacteria to come in contact with the genetic information into the cell, acquiring from the bacteria that had just life. So, whether it's true on transfer, microevolution, transfer of genetic material is unguided and non-teleological, deleterious or beneficial or neutral. But it should be obvious that when the genetic information is taken up into a bacteria, they quickly spread throughout the population of progeny, because it's a single-cell organism. So all the mutations that occur in a single cell are then reproduced in all of the progeny that result from that cell. So this mechanism is a very powerful mechanism that allows bacteria and single-cell organisms to survive in the changing environment. Mutations in unicellular organisms allow adaptation to environments and optimization of specific ecological niches on an ongoing basis. This brings us now to the category of speciation. And much like the word evolution we're in the process of trying to undertake, Species is another word equivocated, used in many terms and meanings under different conditions. This actually has a name called the species problem. And the species problem results from a wide range of in defining how species are identified and how species function in nature. Approach for trying to identify how species function and how they're identified in themselves is known as a species concept. And currently, there are at least 26 different recognized species concepts. That's phenomenal. But the important point is that you must be very careful to know what they're talking about when they are going to species, especially in this topic of speciation. Speciation refers to the process in which a given species becomes genetically, phenotypically, or by appearance, and behavior of the species. And it's typically due to geographical isolation that results in reasonably independent groups. During speciation, radiations occur. A single starting species is split into various ecological niches where variable environmental pressures. In relative, organisms undergo different types of environmental stress and pressures that affect the organism at a microevolutionary level, and also at a genetic drift level, because now we're talking about organisms that sexually reproduce. These variable stresses and environmental pressures also result in epigenetic changes that can affect a species' phenotype and behavior. And over time, each niche will mold a organism that will be specific to that ecological. So, when described a speciation event in the type of on the Galapagos Islands. He identified 15 or 16 different types of events that were part of the different species was the size and thickness of the beak of the event. But recent studies have indicated that beak morphology, or the shape of the beak, changes in an oscillating fashion, not in a progressive fashion towards some new and novel structure. So in wet environments, will be thicker. In dry environments, the beak will tend to be thicker and more wide. So this suggests, at least on one level, speciation results from a type of phenotypic that is adaptive to varying environmental changes. In other words, it's not unidirectional change or progression to something utterly new. It's an oscillating change. And it's also now an organism to make giant from one taxonomical level to another. All of Darwin's finches remained finches. It's also true for biology and research snails. Also, on an island environment, snails were isolated in different geographical regions. But again, what Gould described was diversity within snails that were well suited to particular ecological niches, but they were all snails. It was an adaptive diversification within snails. More recently, in wolves, which are geographically behaviorally distinct canids, have been examined at a genomic level. These canids are actually protected as endangered species in the United States and in Canada. But at the genomic level, they discovered that these different species are really just genetic hybrids of coyote and gray wolves. This new data is actually examining their protected classification and status as endangered species, and it highlights the species problem in regard to evolution. Much active breeding in dogs, coyote, and to be the result of variation with an ongoing species radiation event. No doubt, are now isolated, certainly by behavior and geographic constraints, but the very species may be isolated in the they can no longer cry. So recent research also connected within an ecological web and flies and wasps, and what they basically is that the species co-adapt to the environment, and it's environment. But yet, even these examples, contrary to what they claim, has no significant macro the changing of species into a different kind of classification. And even like the North American wolf study shows, all the species are entirely different, like coyotes or dogs, it doesn't mean that one is giving rise to something other than a kind of finches remain, hills remain hill, plants, flies, and wasps, although they're changing and co-adapting flies. And finally, if we consider the in context of humanity, what we believe is that the primordial Eve that were created in the Torah, in his image, he the male. If you believe the scientific data that dates mitochondrial Eve and Y chromosomal Adam to 150,000 years ago, then all of the diversity that we see in the human population today results from an ongoing speciation event in humanity. Consider the differences of the major races and ethnicities. Compare some of the groups of Australia to, or the Middle European or Native American people. Or consider a dwarf and compare it to an extremely tall human being. Nevertheless, no matter our diversities, we are all human. We are all Homo sapiens sapiens. The last category is that of macroevolution. And be very careful here, because this is where equivocation takes place most often. Macroevolution refers to a series of naturalistic processes over long stretches of time that account for all of life's history, form, and complexity, resulting from descent with modification under pressures of natural selection acting upon unguided changes in population genetics in a contingent and non-teleological fashion. It is supposed that macroevolution involves multiple different mechanisms for achieving its end goals. One mechanism is that of genome duplication. But genome duplication is simply replicating a genome that you already have. You now have twice as much of that genome. And it provides no new information, just greater amounts of DNA. In current observation, genome duplication in human cells is most frequently associated with cancer. And so this type of genetic increase in information is actually deleterious. Similarly, with translocation or jumping genes, where some segments of DNA can be transferred and copied into new positions in the chromosome, positions in the genome, this type of mechanism can shuffle DNA information within a genome and replicate some portions of the DNA. It's not providing new DNA. Observations, this too is associated with human disease. Horizontal gene transfer, although it occurs by viral-mediated mechanisms, it is not as that occurs in single cellular organisms. For horizontal gene transfer to even take hold in a human population, it absolutely must occur in the germline, in the egg of the female or the sperm of the male. Two other mechanisms, co-option or symbiogenesis, are often appealed to as well to account for some of the diversity. Sorry. But each of these has its own hurdle. Generation of new organisms by these mechanisms is not evidenced today. It is rather an appeal to a sketchy if not well-imagined extrapolation of observed complex interdependence of symbiotic organisms to account for large-scale natural changes in life's history. Although many mechanisms are appealed to for macroevolution, no plausible account has yet rationally and reasonably described the muddy middle layer of mechanism. No credible mechanism or explanation has been offered for generating true novelty. No account can be given for the rapid record appearance of most known phyla and fossils that occurred 540 million years in the Cambrian explosion. No true species has ever been identified in the fossil record or through phylogenetic analyses, and no genetic map exists showing a clear Darwinian pathway from one kingdom, phyla, class, or order to another. Yes, ma'am. I will hurry. So what do we do with the evidence? I believe the evidence concludes that we must reject chemical evolution and macroevolution as not being in the scientific data. But I believe also, from the way that I have described these other categories, that microevolution, microbial evolution, and evolution are all evidenced. Each of us, knowingly or unknowingly, uses the data in a way to our view of reality. Molecular adaptation, I think, is a better phrase, perhaps even molecular variation, to take the place of the word evolution in our opening statement. I think it is better to rephrase it that there is more evidence for molecular-based adaptation or variation of highly complex and wildly diverse organisms than there is that the Earth revolves around the sun. But I think that this view supports the view of progressive creationism, that God created life over long epochs of time, according to specific kinds. And God endowed his creatures with the ability to adapt to challenging and changing environments for their continued survival. So progressive creationism is a reasonable and rational conclusion concordant with the data, accounting for the diversity and early appearance of complex life. And it also accounts for the tuning and intelligibility of the universe, which my colleague Dr. Zvierink will talk about this afternoon. As a first-century apostle of Jesus put it, for ever since the world was created, people have seen the earth and sky. Through everything God made, they can clearly see his invisible qualities, his eternal power, and divine nature, so they have no excuse for not knowing God. Or as the psalmist David puts it, the heavens proclaim the glory of God. The skies display his craftsmanship. Day after day they continue to speak. Night after night they make him known. They speak without a sound or a word. Their voice is never heard. Yet their message has gone out through all the earth, and their words to all the world. Former atheist and philosopher Anthony Flew actually condemned theism before his death, even though he was a major proponent of atheism prior to this. And he puts it this way near the end of his life: we have all the evidence we need in our immediate experience, and only a deliberate refusal to look is responsible for atheism of any kind. Francis Crick says that biologists must constantly keep in mind what they see was not designed, but rather evolved. Francis Crick, co-discoverer of the structure of DNA, was a naturalist, and the only basis for his comment is an undying dedication to a naturalistic paradigm, not a clear and open-minded examination of the evidence. So, in conclusion, I would say that a Christian paradigm or a theistic paradigm is far better for science than a Darwinian naturalistic paradigm. Because according to the Christian paradigm and theistic paradigm, natural laws allow reproducible regularities that we can examine. We must observe the world in order to know what it is like, as my colleague said in her introduction. Nature is a reliable revelation of God. The scriptures actually tell us that God reveals himself in nature and that he has created us for inquiry and discovery. He wants to be known. The scriptures also tell us that truth can be sought and obtained. In the words of Jesus, when we seek with all of our hearts, we will find the truth. In conclusion, God wants to be known, and he has revealed himself clearly to those who have an open mind and a humble heart in nature and in Scripture and in the person of Jesus Christ. So those who seek will find that there is a creator of all that we see. Thanks be to God.